Hi guys, in this video we'll be looking at the various viral diseases. So I've split the viral diseases into respiratory infections, intestinal infections. These two will be covering in this video. The other infections are your arthropod borne infections, your zoonosis, and your surface infection, which is AIDS. So those will be covered in the subsequent videos. So we will go into today's video. We'll be covering the respiratory infections and the intestinal infections. So the most important respiratory infections are your smallpox, chickenpox, measles, rubella or German measles, mumps, influenza, and SARS or severe acute respiratory syndrome. So before we go into each one of these diseases, there are some common points for respiratory viral infections. So the mode of transmission is usually going to be droplet nuclei. So they're going to be spread by sneezing, coughing, and through the air. So that's a common point for all these diseases. And secondly, they're going to be more prevalent during the cold and dry season, which is during the winter seasons, which would be around your December to February time. So on the lab diagnosis for any viral disease would be your IgM antibody detection, your ELISA or PCR for DNA or RNA depending on what type of virus it is. So these are all the common points which you need to know about. Moving into the specific viruses, so first we'll be talking about smallpox. It's caused by variola virus, and the clinical features are you have fever. Any all these respiratory viruses have URI symptoms, which is cough, fever, malaise. All these are common symptoms which you can write for each of these diseases, but there are some characteristic findings which only those which I have mentioned in each of these diseases. So, macular papular rash and lesions on the body are the important features on smallpox. Please do note that chickenpox also produces similar symptoms, but lab confirmation and no alternative diagnosis that it is not chickenpox. Then only we come to a conclusion that it's smallpox. And it's important to know that smallpox is eradicated from the world by vaccination, but still we have smallpox vaccines ready just in case it reoccurs in the world. Moving on to chickenpox. So chickenpox is caused by HHV3 or human herpes virus 3. So the clinical features are your primary infection is the chickenpox or uh, the rash which is going to be formed in children less than 10 years of age. So the secondary infection only occurs when there is decreased immunity like AIDS or some kind of chronic illness like diabetes. So that is known as herpes zoster or shingles. So that is also going to form different set of symptoms, and it is not confined to respiratory system, but chickenpox or primary infection is confined to your respiratory symptoms along with maculopapular rashes. So there are two stages, pre-eruptive and eruptive. So when those rashes start appearing, they're in the pre-eruptive stage. After a while, they burst out, and you can see only the scars produced by these rashes. So the lab diagnosis again DNA polymerase and IgM antibody. So how do you prevent this? Is you can use varicella immunoglobulin, which is passive immunity, and there's a vaccine present for chickenpox. So that is all about chickenpox. Moving on to measles, it's called rubeola. So the agent belongs to paramyxo RNA virus group. So the clinical features which you need to know about are the prodromal stage, that is the URI stage, the eruptive stage, and the post-measles stage. So eruptive stage is the important one where there are Koplik spots present in the buccal mucosa. So what these Koplik spots are basically white lesions with blue tinges in the center. So that is the characteristic feature of Koplik spots. And we say Koplik spots, everyone knows it's measles. So the lab diagnosis this for this, since it's an RNA virus, reverse transcriptase PCR, and so it's a negative sense RNA virus. So and then you can do IgM antibody testing. Again, prevention is by this vaccine called MMR. This is the same vaccine which we'll be using for mumps, measles, and rubella. And there's a passive vaccine immunization by using immunoglobulin. So the MMR vaccine is given in three shots in 6, 10, and 14 weeks in intramuscularly in the anterolateral part of the thigh. So that's a general thing about that vaccine. Moving on to rubella or German measles, it's caused by rubella, which is an RNA virus. So again, this mostly affects only children. There are four stages of this disease: prodromal, lymphadenopathy, rash, and then complications. So these are the four stages. You just write about the URI, then lymphadenopathy is enlargement of lymph nodes, mostly cervical lymph nodes, and then rash like chicken pox and smallpox, just rashes present in the body, and then complications. It can lead to other diseases. So you can just go through the complications. I've not mentioned them here. And then the lab diagnosis for this um, German measles is heme agglutination inhibition. So this is the gold standard test for rubella, and then you can do your ELISA and IgG as usual. Prevention is again your MMR, which is a live attenuated vaccine, 6, 10, 14 weeks, intramuscular anterolateral part of thigh. You can give a booster dose 1 to 2 years after the third dose. So moving on to the next virus, which is mumps. So it's caused by myxovirus parotiditis. The clinical features are parotid gland enlargement and earache. It also affects the testes, pancreas, and CNS in rare cases, or it can cause pancreatitis, orchitis, and then encephalitis. All these can be caused by this mumps virus, but it's very rare. Prevention again, MMR vaccine. So there is a special thing called mumps surveillance. So how do you do is first you take the account of all the cases of mumps. So there are three types of mumps cases: ones which are detected clinically, and then lab confirmed, that is your heme agglutination. No, lab confirms using your ELISA or PCR test, and that is the second type of case, and epidemiological confirmed mumps. All of these three numbers are just closely monitored to check the prevalence of the disease. Moving on to influenza. Influenza is nothing but common cold, so there is no specific treatment for this. The agent is orthomyxovirus. The clinical feature URI, and then prevention is you have vaccine, which are of two types: killed vaccine and live attenuated vaccine. So influenza, they might ask you in detail about avian influenza. Again, you need to talk about the same thing, but avian in the sense it comes from the birds, so it's also known as bird flu. And then the most prominent one is H1N1, the outbreak which happened in 2009. Then we have a vaccine for that, and you just write the same stories over and over again. So I didn't write down a lot of points in this. So the last one is SARS. So if they say SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, you just think about coronavirus, all the symptoms, all the vaccines, all the managements, and you just write it down. Okay, there are a lot. Everyone will be aware of this, and I don't think I need to specify any points for this. Everything about coronavirus you put down in this SARS, and that would be all the respiratory illnesses. Moving on to intestinal infections, so two of them will be covering: poliomyelitis and viral hepatitis. So your poliomyelitis is caused by poliovirus. The clinical features are your inapparent infection, abortive polio or minor illness, and then non-paralytic polio and paralytic polio. So this polio causes paralysis, and children have this tetrapod kind of movement where they move around in a very vague manner. If you have time, just go check out on YouTube that clinical features, very useful in the diagnosis of polio. So more than the agent factors and all those things, you need to know about the prevention. So the vaccine, polio vaccine, there are two types: inactivated polio vaccine and oral polio vaccine. So inactivated polio vaccine is also known as Salk vaccine, and your Sabin vaccine is your oral polio vaccine. So your inactivated polio vaccine is given intramuscularly or intradermally, again 6, 10, 14 weeks, and fourth dose is given 1 year after the third dose. So this produces serum immunity but no local immunity. So what this means is it prevents paralytic polio, but polio infection is still present in the patient. Only the most complicated paralytic form has been prevented. So your oral polio vaccine is the latest one, and it's the one where it is helping the world like almost eradicate polio. So what you do is you put 2 drops of that oral polio vaccine, and then this provides local immunity, and so there's no polio vaccine infection as such. And so this oral polio vaccine requires it can be stored in two forms: stabilized form or non-stabilized. So stabilized you need 4 degrees Celsius temperature, and non-stabilized you need minus 20 degrees Celsius to store. So your last thing will be your hepatitis. So this is a very huge question in microbiology, and I'm sure most of you would know almost all the details about it. So we just go through it in brief. So there are 5 types of hepatitis virus: A, B, C, D, N, E. Of this, B, C, and D are transmitted via your blood and body fluids, and A and E are transmitted via your fecal-oral routes. So, and they have the specific antigens and antibodies which can be tested, and there's a graph which you will all be aware of, that is on which period which antigen is present, which antibody is present, and all these things you would have already studied in microbiology. So I'm not going to go into details of that. So just a few symptoms of each of these, and that will wind up with that. So hepatitis A is a fecal-oral contamination. So you have a diarrhea, fever, and then loss of appetite, nausea, malaise, jaundice. So you have 6 weeks recovery time, and this is not very dangerous type of hepatitis. Now your hepatitis B is the most dangerous one, and there's a vaccine for this which all medicos are supposed to take before joining their college. So this can cause liver cancer and liver cirrhosis, so it's very dangerous. Then hepatitis C, again it comes along with hepatitis B and doesn't come on its own. So it's like a co-infection with hepatitis B. Hepatitis D, again only if you have hepatitis B you can be infected with hepatitis D virus. And then hepatitis D resides inside hepatitis B virus. So this D plus B means more risk of liver failure and liver cirrhosis. So again, it's transmitted via contaminated intercourse and sexual contact. So finally, your hepatitis E. So again, it's transmitted fecal-orally, jaundice, nausea, fatigue, and there's a weak immune system during pregnancy and greater risk of liver failure. So that would be all the important intestinal viruses. So hepatitis A and hepatitis E are the fecal-oral transmitted viruses, and those are the ones which you need to focus on when you're talking about intestinal infections. So that would be all for this video. We'll be covering the other viral infections in the following videos. Thank you.